Hello and welcome to the Our Gifted Kids podcast. We are back with part 2 of our conversation with Jess Farago. Now, in part 1, you may remember she was telling us about that journey of selecting the school for her son who was entering into their first year of schooling. And we got about halfway through the year in that episode. So in part 2, we finish hearing about the rest of the year. How did it go? Was it still smooth sailing because we had a very good beginning? Or were there some challenges? That could be a spoiler. And then Jess shares with us some of the tips and tricks that she has learnt over the year about just kind of navigating that first year of school with her son. What worked, what didn't, what she's going to continue to do into the future. So a really great episode full of lots of things that I think you can take away with you if you've got a child still at primary school, but probably even high school. It's been a wonderful series. We started off with Emily, who was a mum of a gifted child, and they were just entering this first year of school this year. And then we had a chat to the delightful Stephanie Higgs, a gifted educator and differentiation coach, where we talked about some of those issues around those early years of schooling. And then we had this conversation with Jess, a provisional psychologist, who is at the end of that first year of school with her son. So it's a really nice wraparound, and we've got one more episode to go, which is going to be lots of tips and tricks, a bit of a summary of all those great things that we've learnt over the last few episodes that we can all take away with us. I haven't recorded it yet, in all honesty. So there is still time to comment on social media, either Instagram or Facebook. I will be going all over the comments over the next few days, seeing if anyone's got any further questions or further tips and tricks that, maybe there's some things that you have discovered over that first year of school that you would like to share. So by all means, comment away, Facebook and Instagram, let us know, and I'll be having a look at those over the next few days and recording that final episode in this series next week, which I'm super excited about. Thank you so much to all of our guests who have been involved. It's been a really great topic, and it's been really lovely to dig into it from these different perspectives. If you've enjoyed the podcast, you can support us by just leaving a review, sharing with friends. There's a tip jar, and there's even the opportunity to become a podcast patron. You can find all those links in the show notes. We're on Facebook and Instagram. You can join us there, subscribe on the website, or even join our free Facebook group. Thank you so much. Let's get on with this episode and see how this year ended. Talk to you soon. Bye. Hi, I'm Sophia Elliott. As a parent of 3 gifted kids, I'm here to talk about all things gifted. Because I've been isolated and uncertain, and I've felt like that parent, then I found peace of mind, support, and my community. This podcast is about sharing that journey, actually parenting gifted kids, and connecting with advice and support. So we have everything we need for every member of our family to thrive. This is the Our Gifted Kid podcast. So you've had a very successful beginning, which is just, oh my God, so amazing. Sounds like the educator is really on board with working through this in the school. What happened next?
Well, yeah, he loved school, so happy. So throughout the year, like every term was almost so individual. There was no smooth flow between terms. So term 1 was this, what do you call it? Like studious, well-behaved, I'm here to learn, I'm never going to interrupt kind of child. I'm new. I guess, you're the good job, teacher's pet kind of thing. And then the second term, it was, he's getting comfortable. He's starting to be a rat bag, not in the classroom, but in the playground. So because being younger, we started to think that, and I just had constant conversations with the teacher. This is the other thing I recommend. If you're able to hang around the prep area, which we were, and I didn't hog her or anything, but she always came out and said hello to the parents. When I can't stay, and if she said, look, we'd discuss it. A lot of times you go, can we have a quick chat in here? And I'm like, what's he done now? I don't did anything big, but I think it's being younger because the older boys didn't do this. He went through a phase of 6 weeks where once a week he did something really silly in the playground. Like he showed his bottom, thought it was really funny. We had to have a chat and discuss whether he got the response he wanted. He said no. So he learned that wasn't going to work. So he didn't do it again. So he never repeated the same mistake, but there was a lot of life learning incidences that happened.
So there's a lot of experimenting socially
Oh, yeah, but
Yeah.
that was term 2. Then term 3, he was a completely different kid.
Yeah.
There's no experimenting in the playground anymore. He was leader of the pack, and he was suddenly everyone wanted to be his, well, not everyone, but he formed like a nice group of friends.
Yeah.
But this is where it got challenging because amongst it, he became best friends with this little boy, and they got tunnel vision for each other.
Uh-huh.
And no one else existed in that room except for those 2. When they were the moment he was playing with other friends and this little boy came running down the hill, bang, he was there, no other friend existed. And he loves his other friends.
Yeah.
Like, we spent a whole term with this is where it got challenging because the teacher and I had very different approaches. The
Mhm.
teacher's going, "He needs to learn to include everyone." And I'm going, "He's neurodivergent. You shouldn't be changing, or I don't think you should be changing how he who he wants to play with. But I think we can find a way in which he can articulate it in a nicer way to his friends because he's only 5. He doesn't know. He doesn't mean to go, no, I'm busy because he's
Yeah.
distracted by his friend. We need to teach him how that makes others feel. And so we eventually came to a certain point, but I battled this trying to change the way he was socially. And I'm all for strategies and interventions to improve challenging behaviors. And but what was happening was this little kid, the 2 boys who were perfectly happy,
Yeah.
and others were wanting to change that and say, "No, you go play with them, you have to include them." And I remember this incident where one of the boys in their class, who's got some challenging behaviors, but my son really likes him, they get along quite well, wanted to play with my son and his best friend. They both my son and his best friend both said, "No, we're playing our game." So they've been practicing. So my son would turn around and go, "No, we're actually playing together, but maybe I can play with you later." This boy pulled him off the monkey bars. My son hit his chin on the ledge where you stand, but
Yeah.
and got in trouble because he wasn't including this boy.
Oh, that's tricky.
And so I started to get a little bit frustrated because I felt like I was at this roadblock
Mm.
where I was not going to be supported in how to approach the situation. And anything I said
Yeah.
to the teacher, I got fobbed off. "Oh, but he's gifted. He should know how to behave." And I'd be
Mm.
like, "Oh, no, but he's neurodiverse. He needs support. There should be a support in place, you know?" And I didn't want to get in her bad books because she really was such a good teacher. But these little things along the way made me go, "Oh, really?" Like, and there's ways we can approach this.
Yeah.
And so I was doing it at home. And I'm saying, so he came home one day and he said, "Mum, so and so was running away from me." And I was like, "Oh, that's not very nice. How did that make you feel?" He's like, "Well, it made me really sad." And I said, "So how did you deal with the situation?" I went and spoke to the 2 boys and I said, "I really don't like it. It makes me really sad." And one of them was his best friend. His best friend stopped. But we had a chat about it. And I said, "Do you remember at the start of the year when you and your best friend were doing that to that boy?" He goes, "Yes." And I said, "Well, that's exactly how it would have felt for him. And it's never happened since."
Mm.
But the way that the school were approaching it was you play with that kid. You include
Yeah.
them.
Yep.
So my strategy at home, which is going against the teacher, was okay. So if I'm going to make up names, if Lisa and Jane come up to you and
Yep.
Boris, don't know why I pulled that name out, and they say to you while you and Boris are playing, "Can we play with you?" And you're in the heart of a game because, as you
Yeah.
know, and I've heard you in some of your podcasts, the gifted child tends to like to rule the roost in the game, and he would make up a game about animals, and his best friend basically did what he said. It
Yep.
made the rules. The best friend didn't complain.
Yep.
It wasn't like a bossy situation. So this would happen. And I said to him, when these 2 kids come up and they want to play with you, how about we approach it with something like, "No, no, thank you. Not right
Mhm.
now. We're at
Yeah.
the game. I'd love to play with you later." So he started his approach. It was normally scripted, which I'm not a huge fan of, but it worked.
Yep.
And really worked because I said to him, if the way you are with these particular friends all the time comes across as mean, they're not going to want to hang out with you.
Mm.
Simple as that. And I said to the teacher, he'll learn. He will learn when they stop hanging out with him. Where are we? We're at the end of prep and he's played with every single one of them over the holidays.
Yep.
If he really was that bad, they wouldn't have come back. That's how I see it.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that story. It's a really interesting story, and I'm listening and thinking about, do you know, from the like you say, from that parent perspective, and with my parent hat on, I I'm very cautious of situations where as adults we are invalidating our kids' ability to make choices
Mhm,
about themselves, their friends. It's almost like a consent
mhm.
thing for me. And this is just as a parent. I would be interested to, I mean, I know you're a provisional psych, but to get like, a professional, dissection of this. But as a parent, I'm kind of like, because to me, it's like when we say things like that as parents, what we're saying to them is how you feel and what you want to do and who you want to play with is irrelevant. If someone wants to play with you, you have to do that thing, do you know? And I try to empower my kids to feel like actually what they want is important
I
and they
agree.
don't have to put other people first. It's
I
a
completely
healthy thing, right? Yeah.
mhm,
And I think for me, it kind of boils down to that our own personal self worth and consent
mhm.
and that kind of stuff, And so, but but like you said, and I've certainly had these conversations in the past, is kind of like while we get to make these choices about who we spend our time with, it's important to be kind to
Right.
people,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I hope that's how I told the story, that that's the kind
Yeah.
so
Yeah, yeah, it is. Yeah, totally.
I'm in from a professional perspective
Yeah,
and
yeah.
a mum perspective. So I worked in a primary school last year for my
Yep.
placement, and I'm all about empowering, yeah, their feelings, their emotions, what they need, what they want, but
Mm,
being kind. So I found it
yeah,
quite difficult to navigate because I was almost at a point where it was like I've got to do something that's going to work because
yeah,
otherwise he's going to be forced to do things he doesn't want to do.
yeah.
So the way I approached it with the teacher was literally, I kind of hate doing this. It's really against my values, but I kind of had to dumb myself down and be like,
Mm,
no, I've sort of had a chat to him and told him that, gotta be kind to everyone and include everyone. But really, I was saying to him, this is where we need
yeah,
to speak nicer. I said,
yeah,
I
yeah,
said to him, darling, I know that it doesn't come from a bad place. I know you're not mean. You don't mean to do it like that. All that you see is your best friend and you don't want anyone else. I totally
yeah,
get it. I was
yeah.
like that at school too. But you don't like it when someone tells you to go away. So we've got to find a way in which we can approach that. So I went down that path.
Yeah, totally, yeah, and likewise, as a parent, I'd be stu would, and I feel like I have, this is sounding very familiar, a very similar approach, and, I just had a thought, what was it? And it kind of brings me back loosely, but I'm gonna roll with this. What I really liked about the Montessori philosophy in its essence is this respect for the child and respect for the child's work, and the child's work is play. And so we're especially, I mean, all kids, but, especially with that tendency for a gifted kid to hyper focus and stuff, when they're like in the middle of that game with no doubt very complex rules,
Oh,
a very complex game, and they're in the middle of that game, being interrupted, whether it's a parent saying, "Stop this, we've got to go now," or someone saying, "I want to play with you." It's like, "No, I can't cope. I've got to just keep doing the thing." And it's sort of like
it's
the
catastrophic.
yeah, that's right. At the heart of that, there's this also, I think, a sense of respecting where the child is at in that moment.
Yeah.
Any more than if I was having a coffee with a friend and got kind of interrupted and pulled away, would I be sort of, unhappy about that? So similar kind of thing. So yeah, so you've obviously, lots of pros about this, about your educator and the school, but obviously a few challenges around. And I heard you say that the educator was like, he's gifted, he should know better. Oh, that's obviously a very unfortunate mindset. So Tell us about the final term. So it's very much a shift
Mhm.
each one. I think we're up to
Yeah.
3rd or 4th term now
Yeah.
at an end.
But they all sort of get foggy in my brain, but I remember
Yeah, totally.
there was look, the biggest challenge for me, which was what I was gonna segue into, which was sort of in line with what you were literally just saying about empowering a child's autonomy, needs, want, that sort of stuff, as well as my biggest challenge I was faced with, which I left the school in tears and I will never forget it. And I don't know whether all parents would feel this way, but for me, it broke my heart to hear the teacher say this. So this was term 4. So has always been a very affectionate child, and I could be wrong here. I have read that gifted children tend to be very affectionate, highly sensitive, emotional, big emotions. We know the big emotions,
Yeah.
and maybe it's to do with the way that we are, because at home we're very affectionate with each other because it's just us two. I don't know. I'm not saying others aren't, but that's how I see it. And so he's always hugging his friends, and I hear him going, so and so, I love you. And he cries when he hasn't seen one of his friends for a week and he's going for a play date because I haven't seen them for so
Mhm.
long. So I've got these big feelings for these kids.
Big, yeah.
Yeah, for his friends. And he told his teacher he loved her every day. And I remember being approached by his teacher in term 4, and I'm quoting her on this. And she said, his affection towards his friends is unhealthy, and I'm working on some strategies to change it. And I did not know what to say. I had been that mum that had defended him, advocated for him, if I wasn't sure about something, I wouldn't say much. I'd go home and I'd research and come back with something.
Yeah.
But this time I was like, oh, there's 3 weeks left of term. I'm just going to deal with it next year with the new teacher. I could not say anything. I didn't want her to leave on a bad note with her. Do I feel silly about doing that? Do I regret it? Yes, because I feel like I let him down. But I felt like it was going to be a losing battle with this one. And I remember watching all these other kids running around hugging each other. And then he runs up to his friend and gave her a hug. The friend was perfectly happy. She hugged him back. Teacher said, Otto, so and so doesn't like that. You need to get off her. And the friend goes, I'm fine. I love him. And that really upset me. And then what I experienced after that was so hard to watch. We went to a play at friend's house for a swim in their pool with 2 other friends, and he was so excited to see them. And he said, I can't wait to see them. They're 2 of his best friends. And no, I'm not going to hug them. I go, but you always
Oh.
hug them. He goes, no, I'd rather not hug them because I don't want to get in trouble. It's easier for me to just not hug. And I was trying not to cry. And I was like, the poor little kid, like, he's changing himself just to keep the peace. This is crap. And I got really upset. And so I had a big chat. He would even hug me that weekend, and we hugged all the time. And I had a big chat to him, and I can't remember what I said, but essentially I basically said to him, your affection, your love, your feelings, your emotions are all what make you you. They are the most beautiful qualities about you. That's what makes your heart so amazing. I never want you to change. You should never change. Stay who you are because you are. I can't remember what the wording was. And he goes,
Mhm.
I always get in trouble. And I didn't know how to approach it. And I said, look, the way I see it, if the school are going to constantly tell you to stop hugging and you feel safer, then maybe just ask beforehand, because they're all about consent. Ask him
Mhm.
beforehand. So then the teachers know that you're doing the right thing by the school rules, but know deep down inside that you can hug your best friend without getting in trouble. And he was like, oh, I love you, Mum. And gave me the biggest hug. And he's back to being the Otto that I know. But today, with part bumped into a friend, he said, can I hug you? So he's like doing the consent thing. So I was like, go by the consent. But that really upset me when they said, we've got to change him. And again, sort of on that same path, we had an incident in aftercare, and this is still part of the school. I was told I didn't need to meet with anyone to chat. And this is the advice I give parents as well.
Yeah.
If I could do it all again, insist, if they say no, to meet with the specialist teachers. Even just for a short time. They don't need the whole details. But what my teacher did was told all the specialist teachers he's gifted. That was it. And so I get a phone call halfway through term 3 from the PE teacher saying he's distracting everyone. I had to pull him aside. He couldn't participate. And I said, well, there could be many reasons for this. And I said, he could be overwhelmed. He could be panicking because he doesn't like the delivery of the instruction, as I mentioned earlier on.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that instead of crying now, when he doesn't get the instruction, he distracts others so he gets pulled away so he doesn't have to hear it. And I gave all these suggestions. I gave all these possibilities. I get an email 3 weeks later to say, here's a different child. Thank you so much. I wish I knew this at the start of the year.
Mm.
So what I've done differently for next year is I've approached all the specialist teachers because they changed for grade 1. And I said, look, I just want to meet up with you guys for half an hour with the head of wellbeing. I've got a strategy list with possible challenges that we faced in prep that we can iron out this year, just as a starter. Not saying to do that starting prep because I don't think you know what half the challenges will be in prep. You might have some
Mm.
stuff being consistent, but if you can, just meet with all the teachers, even if it's in one meeting, because it would have saved a lot of time. He got in trouble in art and I was told he was going to get his first detention and we got him out of it because he'd already got punished that day.
Oh, that makes me feel sad.
Him and his best friend, they were writing letters to kids and they wrote something that was a bit cheeky. They thought they were being funny. And a week later, they were going to give him detention during art. And my friend actually ended up emailing the teacher saying, no, I don't agree with that. They've already been punished. And so they got out of that one. But these are just little things that happened along the way that could have been prevented had the teachers known what he was like. And maybe he probably would have written the naughty note anyway. But, there are lots of things that I think could have been a bit easier if people had known. Because every response I've had is what I mentioned earlier. Oh, he's gifted. He should have known better.
Yeah, yeah.
Not, and then I have my script. Yes, he's neurodiverse. He needs support. So I'm always responding with that. And they go, oh, is he? I said, okay, well, if he was autistic and had support and funding, what would you do? Oh, we'd have this in place. So I think for me personally, the biggest challenge is that emotion one, the affection one. And the aftercare. So I was going to say before, the aftercare teacher at the start of the year often liked to play by himself because he didn't know anyone.
Mm.
And for first 6 times he went, when I picked him up, I got told by the head of aftercare, what's wrong with him? I go, what do you mean? And she goes, he's just sitting there playing. And I go, is he happy? She goes, yeah, he was until I came over. And I said, what did you do? She goes, oh, well, I just kept bringing kids over saying, play with them. Why won't you play with kids? I said,
No.
why are you forcing him? It's not. And she goes, it's not normal for him to be playing on his own. And I'm like, you're running an aftercare? And so that really bothered me as well. And
Yeah,
she
that's
goes, I start crying. And I go, because you're making him do something he doesn't want to do. He's feeling safe on his own.
yeah, he may have had a big day and he just needs some quiet time to regulate. Like you said, he doesn't know anyone. He just
Exactly.
needs to ease into it. A
And I
little
don't
bit
know
of compassion.
and I don't know whether any of these personal stories people will either resonate with or they'll find useful, but they're things that I think you can be prepared for with the ignorance of some people. And there are some people who are just so open and supportive.
Yeah.
But being open in communicating with them and being transparent, for me, is what I think works. Because at the end of the day, I'm his mum and I don't really care what they think about me, but I want him to be.
Yeah.
But I also don't want to get a bad rep because I don't want him being punished for it either. So it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
my
Exactly.
approach is usually quite like I'm polite and kind and, I approach it in an appropriate way. But I will constantly pull the gifted line because until they get it, what else can I do?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I really feel for you with the whole hugging thing. And I've certainly been in that situation. It's like, you know, sitting it out versus taking action. And it's like, we just got to get through this. And by the end of the year, like term 4 is so hard. Like my kids are always knackered by the end of term 4, especially first year of school, because I'm not sure about your school, but uh, we were lucky my kids' school during that first term, the kids were allowed to have an afternoon off,
Mhm.
just to help with that 5 days a week thing and things like that. But it's just massive. And
Yeah.
just, I just think boys should never be discouraged from hugging. Like, I just really like you said, it's really concerning to think that a little boy would be discouraged from showing healthy affection. I mean, sure, let's have those conversations about consent and asking. Like that's just, a good thing to learn and start practicing at whatever age. But to actually discourage them from doing it at all is just not cool. Like,
No.
and we know better now. We know that now. We need
Oh,
help. Like
yeah.
we have, so I'm just kind of like, oh my God, we know better than that.
Oh, I know so much better than that. And what I found really handy though is all the challenges I've been faced with this year.
Mm,
I didn't approach. The grade 1 teacher came up to me on the last day and said, "Are you autism?" Yes. And so she already has been passed, had information received from the prep teacher. And she said, let me go over it. Same thing, but
mm,
I'll do it before school starts. So she's starting with me earlier.
yeah,
And I basically just went straight in and said, look, there are some things that happened this year that I would like to not happen in grade 1. So we've got strategies that can work for that. Let's work on that
yeah,
this year. I know that we're probably going to be faced with new challenges this year, and this will be our
yeah,
process throughout the whole entire schooling every year. This is what happened this year. This is how we can approach it next year. And that's, I guess, I'm a very organized, structured person. So I've structured that in my brain as a way
yeah,
in which I can predict a pattern happening, which is useful for me. I'm prepared for change. But
mm,
yeah, it's been, oof, those stories are pretty big, but it's also been a wonderful year. And he's
yeah,
beautiful friends and he's been supported in many ways. Oh, and if your child, which I'm assuming these are all to the parents out there, being gifted will be on, every school has different names for it, but extended learning program,
mm,
independent learning program, whatever they call it. I, naive me, didn't know that if they're on one, you're meant to be having a meeting every single term or twice a term with the wellbeing coordinator and the teacher to discuss whether those goals are being met, where they are at it. I didn't get any of that. And last week I saw his end of semester 2 and where he was at for next year. I had no idea.
yeah,
So that's I was going to say it's my fault. It's not. That was their job. But now I know, make sure that you have your consistent meetings.
yeah,
And just as hard as it is. And I'm telling you, from the bottom of my heart raced every single time I used the G word.
yeah,
That it has to be done because
yeah, yeah,
they are, and that's the reality of it, and it's not gonna change.
yeah,
And assessments are a wonder. Like without the report, I would not have got what I got.
yeah, yeah,
So this is
absolutely.
highly recommended by excuse me, my cricket voice, because of the space I'm working in. It's a neurodiverse affirming clinic. A lot of the clinicians are ed and dev psychs or educational and developmental
Mhm,
psychologists. For those that don't know, they predominantly work in conjunction with or as a multidisciplinary team with OTs and speechies and schools to support your neurodivergent children and deficits, difficulties, behavioral, emotional, all that stuff. And so the advice that I've been given by the many that I have met, and my son's one, get a report before they start school. However, you can't get two within 2 years. So if they've already had one, you have to wait. But that report is brilliant. But if the school just take it on like it's just another bit of paper, then that's another story.
yeah, absolutely. And it comes back to having those open educators who are up for the journey to go on that journey with you.
Love what you're learning from the Our Gifted Kids podcast? Why not become a supporter? The quickest way to do this is to leave a review. There's no need for an essay. 5 stars will do. You can also say thanks with a one-off tip in the tip jar or become a regular supporter for as little as the price of a coffee per month. There are lots of different ways you can say thanks. Check out the link in the show notes or head to www.ourgiftedkids.com to find out how you can help.
Well, what a massive year. And like you say, we obviously have just dissected a few of the challenges there, but all in all, a wonderful year. He's made some lovely friends. It sounds like the school have tried to live up to expectations as best they can. Some ups and downs there, but have certainly tried to meet his needs academically. That be right?
Yes, there are many things that he does that is not even recognised at school, but that's probably a whole nother conversation. But with the masking thing, like that's the other thing I started to notice towards the second half of the year. He's used to dumb himself down in kinder, so we worked really hard during kinder to bring that back up where he's
Yeah.
confident enough. So he's confident now to just not to be free of who he is, to be open about who he is. But there are things like his drawings and his colouring in, I better than what I can do, like but, the report in art said that he was just below his peers in particular areas. And look, this is just my own headspace and my own view, but if this helps any other parent out there, I don't know how everyone's going to take this, but it took me a lot of my own work with myself to do this. A lot of the time I have to read the report and just take it with a grain of salt because I know that that's not what he's like. And if I go, okay, you're an amazing drawer, but is it impacting you at school? No. Is me talking to the teacher and saying, hey, this is what he can do. Is that going to change anything? No, because he's not doing it at school. So for me, it was the areas that he is obsessed with and that he is just passionate about are being nurtured. The other stuff doing at home, whatever. Like,
Yeah.
no.
And
So
yeah. And look, I think that comes down to, as a parent, picking your battles,
yeah, exactly.
and totally, and it's like you said, the 3 weeks of term left, do we take on the hugging battle, the report and the art? It's like, what, and like you say, what are the priorities? Are they being met? What are the
Yeah.
battles we're going to pick?
Well, because
Absolutely. You don't
yes,
have the energy to take it all on, let alone, like you say, what is it going to
not,
achieve in the long run? Yeah.
yeah, not at all. And the way I look at it, Otto's 2 years ahead in reading and writing,
Yeah.
and he writes and reads every day, and he has all through prep. He started obviously very young, but it was in spurts. Now it's every single day. And he has taught himself because he loves it. His photographic memory teaches him the spelling of the words. Like he's got this system and I don't even get it. But I know that it's not only his way of regulating, it's what makes him happy. And so that's where his independent learning program, what it's for. And I believe that that is what makes him the happiest.
Mhm.
If he didn't receive the support in that area, that's where he would really dislike school.
Yeah.
So if he's stuck sitting there writing the cat sat on the mat and he's writing about Aristotle and the evolution of the Triassic period, that would traumatize him.
Yeah, totally.
So
Yep.
everything else, he doesn't care about what he's learning, but with that, he does.
Yeah,
And that's where he plays up. So that, and that's where it's worked.
absolutely. And I think as parents, we also need to kind of be grounded and realistic and know there is no perfect school. Doesn't matter
Oh,
what school you're at, they've all got pros and cons. There will never be, that nothing could ever possibly be perfect for everyone. And so it's kind of like, well, what are my priorities? Is it meeting those priorities? And kind of taking a bit of the good with the bad, so to
yeah.
speak. Yeah, the perfect school is just a
Doesn't
myth.
And
Yeah, yeah.
if I can just throw something in there, you mentioned it earlier about, they come home, they're exhausted, that sort of stuff.
Mm,
One thing advice that was given to me by a friend of mine who's got older kids that had already been through school, but she had a preppy starting with mine. And she just kept saying to me, just remember that they've been at school all day because her son's neurodiverse. They'll be exhausted when they come home. So from my own experience, if this helps anyone,
yeah,
the advice I was given was no extracurricular activities in term one. I
yeah,
started swimming because I think it's a no-brainer. They need to do swimming, but that's just me personally.
yeah.
He did nothing
Swim,
else.
swimming's also good for regulation.
I was about to say
Water
that.
is also good.
Relax.
Yeah, so yeah.
100%. So what I noticed with Otto was the second week of each end of term,
Mm-hmm.
like last week of the end of term, we started to get the big emotions daily.
Knackered.
Yep.
Yep,
Out of the norm, when he's
yep,
over, well, I've done too much with him.
yep.
Every day, the teacher would say, "Oh, he's been emotional all day." So that was either he's emotional all day because he's exhausted or because
Yeah.
and this happened for 2 weeks. And so my it's not even advice. I'm just letting parents
Yeah,
know, be
yeah,
prepared for it. And
yeah.
another thing that I found brilliant, which was advice that my mother dearest gave me, which I absolutely love. they're going to be stuffed, like you said, when they get in the car. They've been listening all day. I let Otto navigate.
Mm.
I don't say,
Yep.
how's your day? I just say, hi, darling. I miss you. It's so good to see you.
Mhm.
And then, we just sort of sit. He gets out his writing book because that's how he likes to regulate. And then when it's his time, he'll go, do you know what we did today? Or it might even be the next morning. So, or maybe I do say, how was your day? Because I like to find out how his day was, but I don't ask questions. What did you do? Who did you play with? And the other advice I was given by a psych was don't ask who they played with because they may not want to have played with anyone. And it puts this expectation that they have to play with
Yeah.
children. So I usually say when we're talking and he's navigated it or instigated it, I will then say, what did you do at lunch?
Yeah.
Play. And then he goes, well, I played with so-and-so, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I trial and error, but I found it really worked. A lot of kids I do know come home and doubt, might have tantrums, whatever it is. So be prepared for big, big, big emotions.
Mhm.
I'm not trying to boast, but I was lucky I didn't get that. He
Mhm.
was slow and bright, but I wouldn't see him for 2 hours. So,
Yeah.
so I missed him. So they're all different, but
Yeah.
definitely be prepared for big emotions, exhaustion, and maybe not wanting to do what they usually do at home because they've done it all at school.
Totally, and really great advice there, and we certainly experienced that as well. Like I said before, that first term of that first year of school, if your school offers a half day or an early finish, and you can take that up, work allows you to make the most of that, definitely consider it because it's a big shift it's like going to full-time work from part-time work. Do you know, it's
Yeah.
exhausting. It takes a good term or more to settle in, to build up that resilience to get through the week.
Feel
They'll
safe.
definitely be knackered. Great advice not to do extracurricular activities in term 1. And like you say, by the time the kids get to the end of term, they're exhausted. I used to see a lot of term 4 fatigue where they were just the whole term was exhausting, but actually the last couple of years, I now see that building from term 3.
Wow.
They just get really tired. And for those kids who are doing like OT or speech or psych or whatever it is on top of school or extracurricular, we actually will have whole terms off appointments just to have a bit of a break. And when I pick my kids up, I have snacks.
Yes, I
Um,
do that too. Always have food.
yeah,
Hungry.
yep,
Sorry.
absolutely. And crunchy or chewy is a really good regulating food. So I'll often have something crunchy or chewy. So they get in the car, they have some food, like you say,
I found routine help too.
yeah,
So we had a scheduled day that
yes,
have
yep,
anything on after school where
yeah,
he would know every Tuesday we were at the library. So
yeah, nice.
I picked him up, those library books were there because he loves the library, relaxes.
Yeah,
So he would know, and I
total
found
treat.
that really, really helpful. I also found hanging around after school really helpful as well because he got
Mhm,
to go around with his friends and really be
yeah.
free.
And that's a good opportunity for them to decompress after school.
Yeah.
Get the sillies out, so to speak. Absolutely. I probably linger longer than the school would like with my kids. They can have a bit of a run. And it also means you can chat to the parents or the
Yep.
teacher.
Some
And
wonderful friends this year.
yeah, absolutely. And we also have a whole range of fidget things in the car. And even because I've got 3 kids and we often carpool. So the car can be full of kids and I'll have some ear protectors. I've always got a few pairs in the car. So for any child who's just like, I don't want to listen to everyone else, can put them on, try and dull the noise a little bit
Mhm.
if needed. Yeah, so various tips there, which are great. And obviously do what works for your family, but definitely lower those expectations
Oh, yes.
in that first year of school.
100%. I went in with this expectation of I have a child that can read and write. He'll be starting off on grade 1 stuff. But no, not the case. He has to meet all the basic criteria and
Yeah.
assessments to get to where he needed to be. So I was faced with the kid coming home going, the cat sat on the mat, he went to the beach, he did this, blah, blah, blah. What's it about? I don't know. And the teacher not get him to the next level because he had to decode it.
Yeah.
So I had to lower my expectations. So that's another really good thing that you pointed out. So I've been telling one of my other friends who's got a neurotypical child starting prep this year. I was like, don't put too much pressure on yourself at the reader, because
Yeah.
the teacher will be giving a particular reader, even if it's so easy for her, it will be for a reason. And they like to build the confidence up as opposed to giving them something so hard that they have a meltdown. Because I remember Osho's teacher gave him, she was almost trying to prove a point. I opened it and went, she's got me this time, hasn't she? And it was this full on reader that it was way, way, way beyond what he'd been reading. Like he reads different stuff at home, but this was really fine print, it's changing.
Yeah.
He was reading it, the words are merging, and he just had a meltdown. Like he burst into tears. And I was like, if you're trying to prove a point, you win. So what she was trying to show me, I'm assuming, is build it up. Don't go up and then
Yeah.
hurt confidence. So I'm with her on that one. As frustrating as it is, making a kid do a reader that's so mundane and boring for them, there'll be a reason behind it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as much as the teachers can be frustrating when they don't really get it, there's also reason behind a lot of it.
Yeah.
And ask lots of questions if you're unsure. Find out why the teacher is doing that with your child. And if you don't agree with it, tell them why.
Yeah. Yeah. And open communication.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
exactly. And it's like we often, I don't know, sometimes I feel like we give teachers a hard time on this podcast, and it's absolutely not intended at all.
Oh,
They do an amazing job. They have a wealth of knowledge and experience.
job's hard.
It's just a challenging space with gifted kids for them and us, and I just want to acknowledge, like you said, they have a wealth of knowledge that, there's going to be all sorts of reasons behind what they do. And sometimes it can really help as a parent just to understand where they're coming from and to get that. So, yeah, talking it through, trying to ask those questions, like you say, and be curious. Sorry?
Sorry, I was just going to say one last thing. I also
Yeah,
found
please.
reminding myself all the time, because obviously, well, I do, when you're dealing with your own child in your mind, that's the only person you're thinking about.
Yeah.
But also, I found it helpful to remind myself that that the teacher is dealing with, in my son's class, 18 other kids.
Yeah.
And I know that there was at least 4 or 5 in that class that were also neurodivergent.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just our kid that they're dealing with. So
Mhm.
I had to keep reminding myself of that too, because
Yeah.
like I said, they've got a wealth of knowledge, and I admire teachers. I don't know how they do it,
Yeah.
but yes, that's where the open communication comes in.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. But no doubt, first year of school, a massive year. Congratulations on both of you getting to the end of it and coming back for more back for year 2 or the second year of schooling. And, one thing that my husband and I do at the beginning of each year is we'll actually have a bit of a sit down and talk about each of our kids, and we'll kind of pick 1 or 2 things as a priority for the year, right? We're going to work on this year as a way of not getting overwhelmed by, all of, different areas that will, might need some work. But also it means you're not focusing on too many like deficit areas. And it's also like, what are the strength areas we're going to focus on? Let's support them in this way and that way. And like you said earlier, you've got a couple of things this year you're going back with. And it's good to have a little think about that at the beginning of the year. And those goals can be quite modest. For one of our kids this year, it's as simple as we want to encourage them to learn a couple of things where they're going to have to try and they're going to have to practice, and sometimes it's as simple as that, but that is actually a big thing. And that's the goal for the year. And quite frankly, that is enough, and so, because it is, as much as we're in the here and now, it's also about the long game. We don't have to feel like we've got to fix everything that needs fixing overnight, and we can just enjoy our kids,
Yes.
and be in the moment and have fun and enjoy that journey
The
with them.
journey. Yeah, for sure. And
Yeah.
the other thing that I thought of just then, as we're talking about them getting tired before at the end of term, is I found over the holidays, like I like to do things with people and socialize and hang out with friends. But I also found when we spent our holidays with more downtime than social time was so much better for them, because they
Oh
need
my God.
break.
Yep.
And I saw a different child starting one term when we, I think, spent the last week of holidays doing not much. We just did
Yes.
activities at home, took the dog for a
Yep.
walk, with family. caught up with a couple of friends, but it was a really low key break.
Yep.
He went back so refreshed compared to filling our cup every single day. Because sometimes you feel like you have to fill that kid's cup,
Mhm.
especially with a brain like that.
Yep.
But I'm seeing these holidays a very overwhelmed child from all the things that we're balancing. So I'm starting my new job. It's just, so I highly encourage, even I got into a routine of day on, day off, day on, day off
Mhm. Mhm.
over the holidays. So they weren't too overworked because school
Yep.
is tough gig.
I
And
heartily endorse that. The
yeah,
kids get knackered too. Like, they really do need holidays as rest time.
they
Uh,
do.
and and we're the same. And back in the day, I used to put them in. They'd do a bit of a vacation care thing, and they'd do this. And look, sometimes that's still nice, but I err on the side of what can we do that's relaxing.
Mhm.
Sometimes you actually just want a few days mooching at home,
Mhm.
reading, playing a video game, watching some movies, just total mooch.
Mhm.
Sometimes it will be like, right, we need to get out of the house. Let's do something in nature, which again is regulating. Um, and then sometimes you do want a big day out and a vacation care activity or whatever it might be. Uh, but yeah, more and more we do a very balanced holiday with lots of mooching
Yeah.
because, like you say, the kids need that rest time as well. Absolutely.
Yep. Definitely.
Yeah, totally. So huge lessons there, huge journey for you. Thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. I'm I hope and I'm sure that anyone who is embarking on that first year journey or is in that kind of kinder phase will take a lot from this conversation uh, and even like towards the end there talking about tips for holidays and things like that. You kind of forget when you're a few years in. All the tricks that the journey you've been on and the tricks that you've learned about stuff like that. So thank you very much for taking us down that road as well. And
Okay.
yeah, it's been just an absolute delight to spend time with you and to
Thank
hear
you.
about everything you guys have been up to and through.
Thanks. I really appreciate being on this. Like I'm very passionate about it, not just because he's my son, but just in general. Like when I go and start my job, one of my goals is to really get down into this giftedness and twice a multi exceptionality. Because I'm just like, I had an epiphany last year. Why aren't I looking at doing a job in this? Like,
Yes,
makes
why
sense.
aren't you?
I've got the knowledge.
Yeah.
And, and just like I said earlier, everything I have said is my own personal experience. And I hope that people can gain some stuff from it. But there might be some things I've said where someone goes, you know, how could you say that? It's literally nothing is targeted at anyone. Nothing is to hurt or upset or offend anyone. It's just purely my own personal experience and what worked for me, what didn't work for me. And my recommendations are based around a very, gifted child that needs so much nurturing, but also needs so much downtime.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I hope that I have given some people some good insight into what they may have ahead of them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because and I put a lot of value. I mean, I started this just as a parent, sharing experiences, and we always encourage people if they're having particular challenges to find those experts and therapists to work through one on one. But this is a safe space where we can just share our stories, share what we've learned. People can take from that what they will, and I think what I feel is a lot of people do see themselves in those stories of other people that we share here and
Mm.
do connect. And it can be quite a relief to hear that they're not alone and take what works and leave what doesn't. And that's obviously the intended thing. And so no, totally cool. It was absolute joy to have you. And please, by all means, we need more psychologists and assessors who get gifted and bring that lived experience. So if I can encourage you to go in that direction,
Oh
please
yeah.
do. I'll
Oh
be able
yeah.
to refer everyone to Jess in future. I'll be very helpful. We need more people working in that area, especially with that kind of personal lived perspective. So thank you so much for being with
You're
us today.
welcome. Yeah, you're so welcome.
And I will share in the show notes, of course, how people can get in touch professionally as your professional self as well. And yeah, really look forward to catching up again and maybe seeing where you're at after the second year of schooling. See what your journey's been like.
Yeah,
Have a little
well,
catch up.
and I'm really curious how it goes because the teacher last year was very warm and this teacher seems very robust. And I'm like, could this not work for him? I'm a bit nervous because he likes that real warm. This firmness could be really good for him, but I don't know. We'll find out. I'll let you know next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Let us know next year. Thanks so much for your time this evening. It's wonderful.
Thank you so much, Sophia.
If you enjoyed this episode and it inspired you in some way, I'd love to hear about your biggest takeaway in the comments. For more episodes, you can subscribe, and to help others find our podcast, please leave a review. You can find show notes and more resources at ourgiftedkids.com and connect with us on Facebook and Instagram. See you in the same place next week.